Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today, we're going to do the first video of 2023, and it's going to be a early impression. And if you guys follow my channel, you know that I call them early impressions because many a times it's the first time that I've worn the scent in a full wearing. So I don't want to say it's a full review because it's not really a full review. It's not like I've had a bottle of this and worn it for years or anything like that. So just take that with a grain of salt. This is just my early impression, and it is on a very expensive niche fragrance, and it's called Roja Dove H, the exclusive Aoud Parfum. And this came out in 2014, and it's discontinued, so it's no longer available for purchase, but there are still bottles floating around, but you're gonna have to pay. This is an expensive scent from the get-go, number one, and then number two, now that it's discontinued, people are gonna try to mark it up. They think they're sitting on a gold mine, that kind of stuff. But before we get into this, let me grab the package, because there's a package over here that I would like to unbox. So we're gonna do a quick unboxing first. And here we go. So this is an unboxing to start the video. And I know some people love unboxing, some people hate them. I don't care. I enjoy doing them because I like, I like showcasing you guys what I'm going for. It gives you an idea of the kind of stuff that I'm buying. So let's open this. I know I bought some, I wouldn't say outrageous stuff, but there's some really good stuff that is going to be coming over the next week or two. And I'm excited to see which one this is, because I honestly don't know. So, a package inside of a box. Put this over here. Rip into this like a barbarian. Another package inside of a package. Another package inside of a package. And here we go. Oh, man, I hope this didn't leak. I can almost smell it from here. This is a thing of beauty, by the way. An absolute thing of beauty. So you guys know a couple things about me. Number one, I love vintage perfume. I love buying specific versions. I like kind of digging into it. And, if there's a vintage version of a scent, I like going for that particular version if people say it's better. And from what my nose has experienced on this, thanks to a friend, Armando sent me a decant of a fragrance that was one of the stars of 2022 for me. One of the best discoveries of 2022s. I can't call it a best buy of 2022 because I didn't buy it. He sent me this very generous decant, and as you can see, it's Santa Maria Novella Pot d'Espagne in the vintage gold foil bottle. And this completely blew my mind. Completely. Instantly one of the best leathers I've ever smelled, which is very hard to do because leather is my favorite category, and I've smelled hundreds and hundreds of leather scents. You guys know my favorites. I've done a top 100. You can go check that out on the channel. But what I found was this. And this right here is the vintage gold foil label of Santa Maria Novella Ambra. Now, the reason I took the plunge, this is a blind buy, but the reason I took the plunge, number one, is that these gold foil label bottles are getting rarer and rarer to find. And he did give me a very fair price. I mean, it was expensive. It wasn't super cheap, but he didn't completely rake me over the coals. And also, I read some very interesting things about Ambra. Number one, I read that Ambra uses a lot of birch. It's almost like a classical oriental compared to like Shalimar, a more resinous, smoky version of Shalimar, which sounds a little bit like Le Lion, but maybe minus the extra labdanum. And so I took the plunge here. It's my first Santa Maria Novella purchase, and I was able to find the vintage gold foil label. Now I want this bottle in this. I want this in this bottle. And I really feel like my Santa Maria Novella collection would be on its way between Ambra and the Pot d'Espagne. But these vintage gold foil label bottles are the ones that you apparently want to look for. And so I am absolutely stoked to have this. This is the kind of thing I want to add to my collection in 2023. Stuff that's rare, stuff that's specific. I didn't see a single other Ambra vintage gold foil label bottle for sale on the internet, to be honest. There may be one out there. I just didn't see it. And so, you know, when I saw this and I ended up getting a decent price, I had to pull the trigger on it. So you will be hearing, I've got some Ambras that I want to get to know and talk about in 2023. I also have a vintage of, let's see if I can find it real quick. There's a vintage Etro Ambra Eau de Cologne. The new ones are Eau de Toilette, so I got the vintage Eau de Cologne of Etro Ambra. This is another. So these two vintage ambers are, you're going to hear me talk about in 2023. So that's the quick unboxing. So let's get into this Roja Dove. So I've got it right here on my hand. I've got about a 5.5 hour dry down. And let me give you the notes and the background and what I get from the scent, okay? So first of all, when you first spray, it opens up smelling like a very interesting twist of an amouage, a note that amouage popularized, I should say, and that is oregano. So when you first spray, you get this bergamot, bergamot oregano combination is what you end up getting in the top. And if you watched my review of Fortnum & Mason Taif Oud, which I did just a week or two ago, you will know that I gave that fragrance a little bit of a tough time because I noticed from the very beginning, from the opening, from the first second it hits your skin, there is a huge note of cypriol in Fortnum & Mason Taif Oud, which is also done by the House of Roja Dove. So this one is H, the exclusive Aoud Parfum. So I think this is a Harrods, H for Harrods. So Harrods exclusive Oud Parfum. They also have an H, the exclusive Pour Homme Parfum. H, the exclusive Parfum Pour Homme or something like that for men. This one's different. This one's marketed unisex, and it's the Oud version. Excuse me. And so I was very interested to see what the opening Oud note in this would smell like, because I think it came out the exact same year as that Fortnum & Mason exclusive Taif Oud. And sure enough, you do get a little bit of cypriol. The reason that I was so stuck on that cypriol opening is when I researched the notes in Taif Oud, there was no mention of cypriol. And so it felt like a little bit of a sleight of hand. I'm not saying that it was, but it felt that way. There was no cypriol mentioned in the notes, and if you've smelled Oud and cypriol, you'll be able to distinguish the difference. And all I got from that Fortnum & Mason Taif Oud, sorry for the long names, but these are both long name fragrances. You know, all I got was this giant blast of cypriol, which is actually okay because I like cypriol, but it was that sleight of hand, you know. Roja mentioned Oud in the note breakdown, but there was no mention of cypriol. And so I had to bring that up in the review, and I had to make it front and center and known. And here, it almost seems like there is a little better blending between that Oud accord and the cypriol. I still get a little bit of earthy cypriol, and it actually is listed in the note breakdown this time. But it seems to be more balanced. And even though cypriol is listed as a base note here, you'll get it in the opening almost immediately. And what you'll get is you'll get that oregano that mixes with it that will... so interestingly enough, talking about that oregano note, Interlude came out in 2012, I believe. It's about a decade old, okay? And I actually got my microfiber towel here so you guys don't have to look at, you know, nothing but fingerprints. And The oregano note was a brilliant stroke by Pierre Negrin when he created Interlude Man, because it was so different from anything that you've smelled. Some people loved it, some people hated it. This is a very divisive fragrance. I love Interlude Man. You can almost see the clash of the notes in the box, in the artwork on the box. But it's a brilliant clash of notes. It's very resinous. There's lots of opopanax, and it smells like you're in a, I don't know, opium tent from hundreds of years ago. And you've got the incense burning. You've got smoke in the air. You've got, it's that kind of relaxed, laid back environment, but also, lots of resins and smoke, ton of smoke. And there's a big patchouli note in here as well. Interestingly enough, there's a patchouli note in H the Exclusive Aoud, which we'll talk about as well. But H the Exclusive Aoud came out 2 years after Interlude Man. So the bottle that I have is not the proper vintage with the snap cap. It is one of the later reformulations, but it's still old enough where Interlude is on the side and on the front of the collar right here. Now they put it down here on the bottom. There's more rumors that it's been reformulated again. So I'm very happy with this. The only difference I can tell from listening to reviews, I've never smelled the real OG, the snap cap version, the original. But the only difference I can tell is that this lasts maybe 6, 9, I would say maybe 8 or 9 hours, instead of the original OG lasted, 14, 16 hours, which I don't really need that. I usually reapply this every 5 or 6 hours anyways, so I don't need a fragrance that lasts 14 to 16 hours. I'm happy with this. The depth all still seems there. It's just, it's maybe not as long lasting as the very original, which was super beast mode, one of the biggest fragrances ever created. And so, interestingly enough, obviously, there was some, Roja was scanning the landscape, and this started to get very popular. It started to get a lot of play in FragCom. So in 2014, it makes perfect sense that he would maybe borrow something that was working so well for his own composition. And the borrowing was that oregano. So I don't give ratings. If I did, just like I had to kind of dock a point last time when I did his Taif Oud review, I would have to kind of dock a point because of the fact that it seems like he's following a trend. And whenever you're buying these very expensive niche perfumes, you want something that's original and you want something that's unique. And ultimately, when the fragrance dries down, we'll get to this later in the review, but when the fragrance dries down, it does turn into a unique and beautiful composition. I really do enjoy this. But if I was being Mr. Grumpy, I would probably dock a point for the, for following the trend a little bit. Now, granted, it's a niche trend, so 99% of people that come in, unless they're serious frag heads in 2014, probably would never connect the two with the oregano note. But, if you're somebody who obsesses with perfume, you think about perfume every day, and sometimes every hour, sometimes every minute, you're constantly thinking about fragrance, then you're going to notice the oregano, the borrowing of that popularized oregano note thanks to this little masterpiece, Interlude Man. So that's the oregano note. And one thing that you'll notice looking at the note listing, let me go through the note listing with you in full so you have kind of a conceptualized idea of what the note listing looks like. So I mentioned bergamot and oregano in the top, and you've got geranium, jasmine from grass, and May rose in the heart, that patented Roja floral heart that you see over and over with the jasmine from grass, May rose, geranium, and then a base of oud, valerian, benzoin, birch, labdanum, nutmeg, patchouli, vetiver, cypriol, and guardium balsam. So let us talk about that base note DNA, because if you have watched many of my Roja reviews, you'll see that one of the issues for me, and that's why you'll see I have stuff like this instead of full bottles. Well, first of all, they're very expensive, so I only try to buy my all-time favorites in full bottle form, number one. And number two is there's lots of similarity between his creations. So it really feels like, whenever they created these scents, they created this beautiful, posh, luxury smelling DNA, and they just kind of shift some things around. They move the deck chairs on the ship. Sometimes it's on this side, sometimes it's on that side, and they'll put maybe one or two new elements in, and bam, it's a whole new fragrance for $300 to $500. And that kind of bothered me a little bit. Once you get to smelling, especially that Middle East line, that Middle Eastern line where there's stuff like Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Sultanate of Oman, Bahrain, UAE, United Arab Emirates, on and on and on, Qatar, you'll see there is a big DNA that really smells very similar, okay? And it's a complaint that I had with many niche houses, but if you go watch my ramble during the Francesca Bianchi review that I just did the other day, I think it was, the ramble was on the Dark Side. It was on a fragrance called the Dark Side. The sample actually broke, so I had to do the review real quick, and I actually cut my face because I just poured it on, and the glass broke, so there was some glass on my skin, and I stuck it to my face. But long story short is I at least got the review out before the whole sample was lost. So we've all been there and broken stuff. Thank God it was only a sample and not a full bottle. But, my thoughts on these niche houses just kind of moving some things around and bam, it's a whole new fragrance bothers me a little bit. It does feel like it's a sleight of hand, like they're kind of taking advantage of the consumer a little bit. I mean, these are marketed towards people with a lot of money. Anytime you're selling a fragrance for $400, $500, $600, $700, $750, $1,000, whatever, his fragrances are, and each one is different and priced differently, and but he has he's one of the most expensive brands out there. You really expect to be getting something amazing. You expect to be blown away every single time. And many of the Middle Eastern house line, and even some of the exclusives like this is an example. Go watch my review from Aoud, the exclusive Parfum, and that one also has a very similar DNA. And so, that's one of my beefs, is when you look at that base notes, you see a lot of the same materials over and over and over and over again, and it just feels like kind of rearranging some stuff. However, here, the creation does end up smelling quite unique. It really does. Even though if you know his Oud line or his Middle Eastern line, the notes look very similar. Somehow, when they put them all together, it does end up smelling unique to my nose. It smells unique, it smells very expensive, and there's a couple points that I want to highlight with this composition. Number one is the patchouli. So normally patchouli is very earthy, but interestingly enough, Cypriol also gives off this earthy, woody aspect to a perfume. So when you combine patchouli and Cypriol, they're just a match made in heaven. They're classic teammates. They work well in the composition, and it adds this beautiful 1-2 punch for me. I could see the Cypriol and the patchouli doing their job. However, yesterday I did a live stream. It ended up being almost 3 hours, but it was a very fun live stream. It was like a closeout 2022, Happy New Year, New Year's Eve live stream, and we did the top 22 patchouli fragrances of all time, according to me, to top 22 patchoulis for the end of 2022. And number one was this. This is Givenchy Gentleman, the vintage version with the silver, sticker that runs around the middle of the bottle. This is my favorite patchouli. This is masculine. It is very 70s in that it's animalic and challenging and masculine and harsh and in your face and earthy and damp, and you really can get the patchouli, but you also get the animalic aspects, the castoreum, the civet, whatever they're using for the animalic aspects here. This is a challenging fragrance, but I love these type of patchoulis. Also, number two, just as a spoiler, if you haven't watched it, at least you'll know number one and number two. But if you know my taste, this shouldn't be a surprise. Carizia Moods Uomo from 1989, I believe it was released. And that's a beautiful, heavy-handed patchouli. Very masculine from the 80s. Loads of classically masculine, punchy notes in there. And like I said, to be honest, sometimes I'm in the mood for that type of patchouli. Sorry for the bad pun on moods womo, but I am in the mood for that type of patchouli sometimes. That's what I want. I want the heavy, punchy 70s, earthy, damp, dank patchouli, green, dank patchouli. And the thing about Roja's patchoulis and pretty much all of his creations is they're not that, and they'll never be that, and they're not meant to be that. Roja's patchouli is pretty much never punchy. They'll never remind you of a head shop or the patchouli from the 70s. You won't think of dreadlocks. You won't think of, bong and pipe shops or anything like that. The patchouli used in his creations are very, very, I would say very rounded. And so you can smell the patchouli if you really focus. Like right now, I can get it. I can pick out the notes to this composition, and we'll get to the separation of notes later in the review. But I can pick out the patchouli, and but what that blending with Cypriol did is it made it very modern. Okay, so if patchouli can sometimes remind you of your father or your grandfather, because maybe your old man, maybe your grandfather wore this, which I have no problem with. I'm of the mindset that things were better back then, and, I would much rather smell like my grandpa or my old man back when men were men, and the world seemed to make more sense. Good was good, bad was bad, and, that's my worldview on it. Your worldview on what you like and what you don't like will spill into your hobbies. It just will. That's just how it is. I mean, you cannot completely separate yourself from the way that you feel, and your likes and your dislikes, and the way that you were raised, and all of this stuff. It's going to blend over into the things you like. Even in perfume, it's impossible to just completely put all of your beliefs and thoughts over here and just completely leave them out. It ends up blending together. So for me, for some people, you may say, oh shit, I don't want someone at work or in the neighborhood to think I smell like my grandpa. For me, I don't give a shit. I wear perfume for me anyways, and so if they don't like it, well, tough luck, Charlie. Go smell somewhere else. And that's just my attitude on it. And so I love those vintage scents. That's where my heart is anyways. My heart is in stuff like this because for me, the ingredients, the blending, the time, the effort, the fact that it really feels like Givenchy put their heart and soul into this creation. Whereas now they release 20 fragrances a year, no one bats an eye. They may release, a fragrance every 5 years back then for men, or every 10 years. Chanel went 20-something years between Pour Monsieur and Antaeus for men. They're between one masculine release to the next. An entire generation basically was born and grew up before they released a new masculine. And so I just feel like those kind of traits draw me to this type of perfumery. There's also a collector's aspect to it, right? There's a collector's aspect to this hobby. It just is. It's very appealing to a collector to have something that is discontinued and sought after and hard to find and that kind of stuff. However, for me, the most important thing is always the juice. If I had to have this juice in a nondescript bottle and I couldn't show it off and say, ooh, it's the vintage discontinued Givenchy Gentleman Eau de Toilette, would I still want this? Hell yes, because it's my favorite patchouli scent. It reminds me of a time where I never was. I wasn't born in 1974. I wasn't born in 1984. But it reminds me of a time that I can imagine the world how it was back then. I get a chance to talk to a lot of older people. Let's just put it that way. I can't talk about my work or anything like that, but I come across lots of older people every single day. And getting to talk to them and hearing their stories, and I absolutely love talking to older people. It's I think it's one of the blessings of I think it's something that this modern society has missed out on, because in the old days You would sit down, you would talk to grandpa, you would talk to grandpa's friends, you would know what they do. You would have that, almost like verbal stories passed down, right, from one generation to the next. And now, since we're all on the phone, grandpa probably doesn't know how to use the phone very well. Many grandpas and grandmas are not going to get on there and post for the world what they would say to a family member one-on-one. And so I think some of that is missing. In the old days, if you wanted to be a doctor, for example, what did your family do if you were well off? Well, they invited their friend who was a doctor over to come to dinner and sit down and talk to you, and that was the world back then. It was different. And you could argue better or worse, but it was different. And there are things about that time, there were things about that time and era that really attract me to it. And so when you take the scent and creating this image of a time where I never was, I love it. I absolutely adore fragrances like that. But there are some people that don't, right? That's the other side of the coin. And that's where I think Roja's creations can really appeal to somebody that want to smell very modern and very luxurious. They want to smell like they're just in a walking luxury bubble. I've heard the term used that these type of fragrances have this luxury blob smell to them. They just smell rich and expensive. And there is a little bit of truth to that. But one thing that I think really softened my heart on this fragrance, because when I looked at the note listing, I was like, shit, this is going to be another same old stuff we've smelled a million times. But what ends up happening is the patchouli and the cypriol smells very modern. That's number one. Number two is there is a note of nutmeg in here. And nutmeg has this quality of like brightening a fragrance up. Normally these type of oriental perfumes, because this is kind of like this oriental, woody, oud, slightly smoky, because I mentioned birch. We haven't talked about it yet, but there is a birch note in here as well. Sometimes they have the capacity to go very dark. They can almost be heavy and weigh you down, and sometimes that's great. There's lots of heavy, huge oriental fragrances I love to wear. I love wearing stuff like JHL or Opium. In any format, the EDT, the Secret de Parfum. I love, those type of oriental fragrances. I wish we had more cold days in Texas where I could properly wear them. Sometimes I'll just wear them in the summer. I don't give a shit, And so the thing about this is the nutmeg and the geranium. Geranium adds this spiciness to it. And remember how I said the cypriol and the patchouli are easy teammates? Well, the nutmeg and the geranium are also easy teammates because the geranium here is not so rosy. There is a rose note, but it smells like it's coming from that May rose that he used. The geranium here, I think, adds the spiciness to it. Nutmeg adds a little bit of spicy quality to it. And it also has the ability to kind of put this wrapper on a fragrance. So it wraps it and it keeps everything in almost like, it reminds me of almost like a sheepdog, and you have a flock, right? A flock of rams. And you've got the sheepdog, and the sheepdog keeps all of the animals, all of the sheep, all of the herd in place. Make sure one doesn't wander off. Nutmeg does that with the notes, and it puts a bow on everything, and it keeps it all in its place, and it brightens the composition up. So this is a very bright, easy to wear oud fragrance. And it skirts the ability that most Orientals have to naturally be down and very heavy. And it gives it this, there's this very upper class feel to the fragrance. It's a very interesting creation. There is also a note of guarjum balsam, okay, which I know you've probably heard many a times if you have looked into these type of fragrances before. But here's the way Roja describes guarjum balsam. He says that it adds this warmth, that it adds this soft, balsamic, and it has this enveloping effect. And I agree with that. This does feel, remember I said it's like you're walking in a luxury blob? Well, he says it's like having this enveloping effect, and there is some truth to that. The nutmeg brightens it up. The Guardian Balsam keeps it a little bit warm and enveloping. Although there's a couple things that he said. If you actually search for Roja H, the exclusive Aoud, make sure you put that little dash after H. So it's H dash H space dash space the exclusive Aoud, and he spells Aoud Aoud because he says when he was in the Middle East, that's how people would pronunciate it. I had some people in the Middle East say, no, it's not true. It's not how we say oud, but that's his story anyway. So he calls it like Aoud. But I think it's still supposed to be said oud. I don't know. But long story short is if you just search for that, his video will pop up first where he gives the interview. There's only one review that I saw on YouTube of this, and it was like a year ago. And I listened to Roja talking about this scent, and he said a couple things that really kind of made my BS detector go off. He said that Cypriol is a rare material, and which immediately made me go beep beep beep. What is going on? Cypriol is actually one of the materials that many perfumers use when they want to use a substitute for oud because it's much less expensive than many ouds. Real oud is one of the most expensive materials that is known to modern perfumery. Maybe ambergris, maybe iris, or orris butter, or whatever you want to call it, is another very expensive ingredient. But some of the ouds are out of this world expensive. And I've never heard Roja actually say they use real oud in their compositions, so I don't know for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a tiny, tiny drop or two so they could say there's real oud in here. But whenever he said Cypriol was a rare ingredient, I was like, okay. And then he went on to, he called benzoin exotic. He was like, there's this exotic benzoin in here, and I was like, benzoin is exotic? It's like the base of every fragrance that is in this oriental style ever. And so it's just stuff like that, where my BS detector is literally like screaming at me when I'm watching this guy speak about this. And he is a very good salesman, to be fair. He's decked out in this sparkly jacket. He's got the giant ring on, and he's sitting in this background with beautiful bottles everywhere and giant chandelier that probably costs more than my house. And he's in the environment. He's at home in his element, and it does come across like he's kind of selling a dream, which is a little bit of what perfume is. I understand exactly what he was saying. He also said something very beautiful, and which I agree with. He said that one of the reasons he fell in love with perfume is because it doesn't judge him. And I guess I could understand exactly what he means by that. He's like, perfume doesn't care if we're what gender we are, what sex we are, what race we are, whether we live in Africa or England or America or Canada. It doesn't care about any of that. Perfume treats everyone equally, except for maybe skin chemistry on some people versus others, but that's not what he was talking about. And I get exactly what he means by that. And so pushing all of that aside, pushing all of the BS marketing, he's a great marketer. He was a marketer at Guerlain for something like 20 years. Marketing is his forte. So whenever you hear him give stories, one thing that does bother me is that he's created this personality, and he just repeats his talking points like a politician. How many times have you heard him say, well, I wouldn't have got into perfume if it wasn't for my mother reaching down and giving me a kiss when I was this old. And, I understand that's for the first time person that's getting to know him and who he is and his brand. And he wants to portray the talking points that will make someone go out and buy $1,000 bottle of fragrance. I completely understand that. I understand the marketing side of it. But sometimes I just wish he would kind of open up and be a little bit more, just be himself, with the camera, and not be the Roja the politician every time, And so a couple other things that ended up coming through, and pushing all that aside, like I said, I still really like the creation. There is a vetiver and birch combination in the dry down, and they kind of show themselves as the hours tick by. you'll pick out that vetiver, which actually smells like the vetiver used in Roja's vetiver Parfum Pour Homme, this one right here. If you've ever smelled the vetiver used here, the vetiver in H, the exclusive Aoud, will remind you a little bit of this. This reminds me of a take on Guerlain's vetiver. Guerlain's vetiver is very outdoorsy, very fresh. There's a beautiful tobacco note in Guerlain's vetiver. Many people call it one of the greatest masculines ever created. And I completely agree. It's not my favorite to wear, but it's growing on me very quickly. It took me a long time to get to appreciate it. You know, when you first spray, it always gives me this very fresh grass, fresh meadow, like you're just sitting in a lovely field and taking in nature. And the vetiver here in H, the exclusive Aoud, will remind you a little bit of that. It'll remind you a little bit of that fresh vetiver, but one of the brilliant parts of the dry down of this fragrance is the birch and the smoky elements. I love smoke in a composition, and you know, it really smells like you can smell both, if that makes sense. I hinted at the note separation earlier, and you know, in the old days, there wasn't this emphasis on being able to smell every single note. They blended everything together, and you had this smell of a fragrance. And it was very hard in the old days to, you know, if you try to pick out notes in something like this, you're gonna have a hard time. Maybe you can pick out the main notes, the patchouli, the honey, the animalics, but you're not going to be able to say, there's geranium in here. Oh, there's May Rose. That came with niche perfumery, I feel. Now there's like this emphasis on being able to really pick out each and every single note. And you can do that here, to Roja's credit. They created this fragrance that that you can smell the fresher, you know, dusty elements of the vetiver, and you can smell the smoky elements of the birch. And interestingly enough, birch is what was famously used to add that smoky element to Aventus, for all the Aventus heads. You know, that smoky pineapple chypre, like a accord fruity chypre that they created. And birch, the smoke was a huge deal. It was a huge part of it. And, you know, listening to the rest of Roja's spiel on that video, he basically says that it's like wrapping yourself up in your favorite scarf or a hug from your lover, that there is a familiarity about H, the exclusive Oud. And I actually agree with him on some level, but on a higher level, I disagree. I totally disagree with him, because to me, one of the things that sets this apart is that many of his creations share that common note listing. And I've been very critical of, you know, having pages and pages of fragrances come out, and each one is $500, and they just kind of move this here and that there, and bam, it's a whole new fragrance. This one, even though there is a little bit of familiarity to it, it also smells like a breath of fresh air, because it smells something different. It smells a little different from the other creations that I've smelled from him, and it's a shame that this is discontinued. You know, it's very elegant. Does it feel like you're being wrapped in a scarf or hugged by a lover? I know what he means. There is this comfort quality to this. And one other thing, as a guy living in Texas, living in a hot climate, I really feel like I could wear this year round. I mean, I know that many of these niche houses pride themselves on being able to wear it anytime, any place. You know, they take Creed or Rojas or stuff like that. Most of the time, you could spray it on in the summer, spring, winter, fall, and it'll work. You know, very few niche fragrances of this caliber, you're going to have to only wear at temperatures below 40 degrees. But this one in particular, because I was mentioning the nutmeg, adding the element of brightening the fragrance up, really makes it feel like I could wear this all year round. This would be a great signature scent. I looked at there's 28 users on Parfumo who claim that they own it. 86% of them are men, 14% are women. I do think it's unisex, but, you know, when you add the oregano in the top and the geranium, which hints at a fougere structure, there is no there is no tonka, so it's not a true fougere, but I think it does lean masculine, although this would smell amazing on a confident woman, I'll tell you that. This would smell very mysterious, very elegant and mysterious, but I think it probably more traditionally suits a man. And so that's my review. That's my take on it. If you have any experience with Roja's the exclusive Oud Parfum, do let me know. I do have to give a special shout out to my perfume god person who actually sent this to me. This is not one of the ones that I purchased. So he kind of did a deep dive and saw which ones I have and which ones I've talked about, and you know, filled in some of the holes. So thank you to him. He wants to remain anonymous, so I'm not going to out him here, but I do want to say a big thank you for you know, being such a big part of Channel Ram, and to the first video of 2023. Thank you all for watching. I hope you got something out of this. I would love to hear your feedback either on the House of Roja Parfums or on this particular fragrance, the exclusive Oud Parfum. Sadly discontinued, but one of the good ones. If you're interested in, you know, this type of fragrance, it's one to put on the list. So thanks for watching, everybody. Cheers. Hope to see you in the comments. I usually don't say do leave a like and a subscription and all that stuff. I've been very remiss on saying that lately. Someone pointed out to me though, and I completely agree. Just real quick, and then we'll call this a wrap. But they were like, "Man, you know, I was looking at your live stream yesterday. You had 60 people in there, pretty regularly, between 50 and 60 people, and you know, you only have 2,600 subscribers. There are channels with 10 times that many subscribers who don't get 60 people in a live stream. So your audience is very engaged, but I would like to see more, you know, new people to the channel, because I know there's more. Every time we continue to grow our subscribers, I get more and more people that just feel like a natural fit for Channel Ram. I mean, it just feels like there's many perfume lovers out there that just don't know about our little community here, the little fragrance town we built, where, you know, I get to play the mayor, but it's you guys that kind of keep the town running. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, I learn more from you than you do from me. So if you have the time to leave a like and a subscription, not that I care about the YouTube algorithm in any sense. I don't care about subscriber numbers. I would still do this if I had 100 subscribers, if I had 50. If I had one, I would probably still do it, because that's what I'm here for. I enjoy giving back, is what it feels like. I used to think fragrance was for me, and I guarded it, almost, you know, jealously. I guarded it like it was a ritual that I did for me. But now that I'm sharing it with the community, I'm finding much more a solid appreciation and enjoyment, and I've learned so much more. I mean, this is a great example from Armando, this Santa Maria Novella, Pau d'Espagne, the vintage gold foil. I never would have discovered this without you guys, and it led to this. It led to a purchase, and I'm damn proud of this one too. These gold foils are getting harder and harder to find. So thank you, everybody, for the participation. Likes and subscriptions help, I think, with the algorithm. It helps bring more people like us together, and that's what this is about. You know, the fragrance community on YouTube, emphasis on community. You know, it really does feel like that we're part of a fragrance family and friends and stuff like that. And so I'm thankful for each and every person who is a subscriber and who has, you know, commented and liked videos and shared their thoughts with me. I try to respond to every single comment. So please do leave a comment, and I will respond at some point, usually within a day. So thanks for watching. Cheers, everybody. Have a great start to 2023, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye now.